Hello everyone and welcome to Sparkle English. If you're here, it's because you want to learn English or improve your level of English, maybe for personal reasons, maybe for professional reasons, and you want to improve your skills as a writer or as a transcriptionist, for example. Today's lesson is going to be all about apostrophe rules. This is the second video in my English Writing Essentials. So let's get started. First of all, we have the introduction to apostrophes. Apostrophes have two main uses. One, they show possession, and possession means when you own something or something belongs to you. So for example, if I have a dog, it's my dog, I possess the dog. And the second use for apostrophes is they indicate letters that have been removed to form a contraction. Now a contraction is when we have two words and we want to make it shorter, so we push them together and we add an apostrophe. And so for example, don't. This is a contraction, and it comes from do not. We'll explain more of that later on. So number one, let's first talk about apostrophes and possessive nouns. We use apostrophes to indicate that something belongs to someone. A lot of people will call this the possessive S with the apostrophe and an S. The first rule is that for most singular nouns, we add apostrophe plus S, like this. So, for example, we have the boy's bike, the dog's bone, Jack's car, Emily's baby. All of these are singular noun because we're talking about one boy, we're talking about one dog, and of course, Jack is one person and Emily is one person. Now, imagine that this boy is very lucky and he has two bikes. We would still say the boy's bikes. We would say the boy's bikes. Nothing would change with this apostrophe S, okay? Because this one boy owns both of these bikes, so we don't have to change anything, okay? Now let's go to the second page. For most plural nouns, we add only an apostrophe. So most plural nouns will end in an S. Because, for example, if we have girl becomes, usually we have to just add an S to make most nouns plural. Girl, girls. Home, homes, for example. Okay? So for most plural nouns, we only add an apostrophe. The boys' bikes. This means there's multiple boys. Maybe there's two, maybe there's three boys. For example, the dog's bones. There's multiple dogs. Maybe there's two, maybe there's three. His parents' car. This would mean both mom and dad, or that would mean their car. So it would be the car that belongs to the parents. Now, imagine this said, the boy's bike, like this. This would mean there was one bike, and both boys share the bike. Maybe they're brothers, for example. Okay? So for plural nouns, we add only an apostrophe at the end. So usually most plural nouns end in S. For plural nouns that do not end in S, we have to add apostrophe plus S. So, for example, the singular form of children is child. A lot of people who are not native English speakers say childs, and that's incorrect. Child is one, and then if there's more than one, 2 plus, we say children. So the children's teacher, the sheep's wool, the women's university. Okay? So because all of these plural nouns do not end in S, this ends in a P, this ends in an N, we can add the normal apostrophe S. Okay, now this is where it gets a little complicated, and this gets very difficult for even native English speakers. I see people who make mistakes on this all the time. Now, singular nouns end in S can either end in an apostrophe or just S to show possession. Okay, so example words, I have Thomas, Lucas, Paris, Barbados. Okay, so 2 places, and I have 2 names. You can say, it is Thomas's birthday. That's correct, because this is a singular noun that ends in an S, so you're allowed to put Thomas's like this. Or you can also put, it is Thomas's birthday, but usually when you'd say this, you'd say Thomas' birthday, because you don't have the extra S. But this means the same thing, and this is also correct. The most important thing to remember is to be consistent. Now, there are some people who will say, no, absolutely, you cannot do the first one. That's not correct at all. But in general, it's accepted to do either or. And as you can see here, I'm going to erase this. Different style guides can have different preferences, but both ways are technically correct. So just be consistent. If you're going to do it one way, make sure to stick to it that whole way. Okay, now we're going to do some practice. Where do you need to place apostrophes in these sentences? So if I were you, I'd pause the video and maybe just take a few seconds to write down your answers or just to think about them in your head before you continue. So we've got Jack's bike is broken. The cat's toy is yellow. And there's one cat for this. The second sentence, the cat's toys are yellow. There are two cats. I'm going to my parents' house tomorrow. Now here we're going to imagine it's parents. It's both sets of parents, a mother and father. And then we have James's party is tomorrow. So the first one we're going to do is Jack's bike is broken. We're going to put the apostrophe between the K and the S because Jack, singular noun, doesn't end in S. The cat's toy is yellow. Now there's one cat. It's singular, so we're going to put the apostrophe between the T and the S. And the last one, the cat's toys are yellow. We're going to put the apostrophe at the end because there's more than one cat. We cannot say the cat's. Then we have I'm going to my parents' house tomorrow. Now remember there's two parents and this word ends in an S normally. So we're going to put the apostrophe at the end. And then we have James's party is tomorrow. Now, because I didn't add the other S here, we're just going to put like this. James's party is tomorrow with the apostrophe at the end. Now remember, because this is a singular noun that ends in S, you can also write James's. I know it looks a little strange, but both are technically acceptable. The one you cannot not do is James, because James is not a name, so you can't do that at all. That's the one that you can't do. Okay, let's go on to number 2. Okay, now we have apostrophes and possessive pronouns. So personal pronouns, unlike regular nouns, do not use apostrophes to form possessives. So here we have our personal pronouns, me, you, he, she, it, we, they, and then we have our possessive pronouns. We've got my, mine, your, yours, his, her, hers, its, our, ours, their, theirs. Now notice with these its, there's no apostrophe, and we don't use an apostrophe for any of these, and this is something that a lot of people make mistakes with. Let me give you some examples. We have the bike is Emily's. That's correct. That's what we learned before. This is a singular noun, and we have the possessive S. The bike is hers. So here, the bike is hers. It belongs to her. But you cannot say the bike is hers, like this. You cannot do that. And you also, if you look down here, you cannot say she's bike is blue. So you can say Emily's bike is blue. But you cannot replace Emily's with she's. It doesn't work like that. You would say her bike is blue. Okay, so let's do a little bit, show you a few more examples here. So some more examples. We have the award is yours. The car is his. The money is theirs. The dog's bone is white. Its bone is white. Now pay attention to this here. Its bone is white. We cannot put it apostrophe bone is white because this apostrophe s is a contraction and it can mean it is or it has. And it is bone is white or it has bone is white. That makes no sense. The its means the same thing as the dogs. Okay? So just keep that in mind. Okay, now another one is the difference between whose or whose. They both sound the exact same, but they have very different meanings. We use whose, W-H-O-S-E, when referring to possession or belonging, just like we've been talking about. But whose, W-H-O apostrophe S, is a contraction for who is or who has. So if I'm asking you a question and I say, Whose car is that? It is Jack's car. The whose is asking who does something belong to. You might wonder what the difference between whose and who is. Well, who is asking about the person. So if I say, who is that? Oh, that is Jack. This is asking about the person. Who is it? But if I say, whose is that? This means that the next, what follows whose, I'm asking, who does that belong to? So if I say, whose boyfriend is that? Oh, that's Jennifer's boyfriend. Okay? Who does that friend belong to? So whose car is that? It is Jack's car. If I say, whose car is that? This would mean, who is car is that? And that makes no sense. So we can't do that. And one more example for whose, you can also use it in a sentence like this that's not a question. I know a man whose daughter works for Jennifer Aniston. So that means the man's daughter works for Jennifer Aniston because the daughter belongs to the man. It's his daughter. 2 more examples. Who's going to the conference tomorrow? Who is going to the conference tomorrow? And who's going to the conference tomorrow? We can't say that because it doesn't make sense. We're trying to ask who is. Okay, let's do some practice. So here we're going to correct these sentences. Whose phone is this? That isn't my phone. I think it is hers. Should we go to my office or yours? Okay, we're going to correct these. This is not correct. Whose phone is this? Because we're asking the phone belongs to what person. That isn't my phone. I think it is hers. This does not need a possessive S because the word is just like this, hers. Should we go to my office or yours? We don't use this. Again, yours. It just ends with an S with no apostrophe. Okay, number 3. Apostrophes with certain compound nouns. An example of a compound noun would be brother-in-law, mother-in-law. If you don't know what that means, your mother-in-law. So for example, if I get married to Brad Pitt, his mom or his mother is my mother-in-law. And my brother-in-law would be Brad Pitt's brother, if Brad Pitt has a brother. Okay? So some compound nouns do not form their plurals by adding S to the end. So example, brother-in-law is singular. Brothers-in-law with the S at the end of brother, that is plural. So for example, my brother-in-law's new job has so many benefits. This means there's one brother-in-law and we're talking about his new job. The second example is plural. My brothers-in-law's wives don't get along very well. And this would be talking about 2 or maybe 3 brothers-in-laws. And we're talking about their wives. So they each have their own wife, okay? It's not that often you'll encounter situations like this, but that's just important to know just in case. Okay, the next one we're going to do is apostrophes with joint ownership. How do you use an apostrophe when you're talking about things that belong to more than one person? So the rule is, when one thing belongs to 2 or more people, make only the final name possessive. So let's do an example. Susan and Dave's wedding. This means that Susan and Dave are getting married and they're having a wedding together. There's just one wedding for both Susan and Dave. It's their wedding. One wedding. And the next one is the same. Karen and Judy's shop. So let's say Karen and Judy are best friends and they have their own shop. They own that shop together. Now again, if we put here Karen and Judy's shops, that would mean Karen and Judy have 2 shops and they own both of those shops together. But when you're talking about separate things that belong to different people, you have to make all the names possessive. So, for example, here we had Susan and Dave's wedding at the top, but down here we've got Susan's and Dave's weddings. So, for example, Susan's and Dave's weddings were both on the beach. That means that Susan had a wedding on the beach with someone, and Dave had a wedding on the beach with someone else. There was 2 different weddings, one for Susan and one for Dave. And if we have Karen's and Judy's shops, that means that Karen has a shop and Judy has a shop. They each have a shop. So let's do some practice for both lesson 3 and 4. Where should you place an apostrophe in these sentences? My mother-in-law's cooking skills are incredible. My sisters-in-law's cars are both black. Jack and Dave's party was so much fun. Karen's and Mary's kids are very well behaved. So the first one, you just have one mother-in-law, and also this is singular here, mother. So we're going to put mother-in-laws like this, the apostrophe before the S. My sisters-in-law's cars are both black. Here, again, apostrophe before the S, because we only have to make this plural here if we're talking about more than one sister-in-law. Jack and Dave's party was so much fun. We're going to put an apostrophe before the S. That means that Jack and Dave had one party, and they had the party together. The last one, Karen's and Mary's kids are very well behaved. Karen's and Mary's. That means we're talking about Karen's kids and Mary's kids, both of their kids, not the kids that they have together, but Karen has her kids and Mary has her kids. Okay, lesson 5. Apostrophes and contractions. Okay, so a contraction is a shortened form of a word or group of words that omits or leaves out, certain letters or sounds. In a contraction, an apostrophe represents missing letters. Examples: I'm, I am. He'll, he will. She's, she is, or she has. Don't, do not. Won't, will not. So here is a very long list of all the different contractions you might run into. I'm going to read them off really quickly for you. We've got aren't, are not, can't, cannot, couldn't, could not, didn't, did not, doesn't, does not, don't, do not, hadn't, had not. Oh, it continues. I won't read them all. Some of these can mean two things. She'd can mean she had or she would. She's can mean she is or she has. That's can mean that is or that has. We'd can be we had, we would. Theirs, there is, there has. They'd, they had, they would. So just be careful with some of these. Even what's, what is, what has. So some of these have multiple meanings, and you'll know that by the context. Now, if you are watching this video because you are a transcriptionist, then sometimes they prefer you to not write the contraction, and they'll prefer you to write the formal word. But that just depends on the preference of the company. Okay, let's do some practice. Where should you place apostrophes in these sentences? I'm going to the store tomorrow because I didn't go today. She won't come to the meeting because she's ill today. Who's bringing the beer? He wouldn't act like that if you were nicer. So let's start with the first one. I'm going to the store tomorrow because I didn't go today. This is a contraction for I am. Didn't for did not. She won't come to the meeting because she's ill today. Won't is a contraction for will not. Now maybe that will confuse you because you say, well, why isn't it willn't? Well, it's an irregular contraction, so it's won't. And she's ill today, that's contraction for she is. Who's bringing the beer? Who is bringing the beer? He wouldn't act like that if you were nicer. Wouldn't is for would not. Okay, congratulations. You've just finished your second lesson with me in Sparkle English, all on apostrophes. I hope that you enjoyed that lesson. It wasn't too difficult for you. Apostrophes is a little bit difficult at first, but the more you practice, the more you study and revise, the better you'll get at it. So thank you very much for watching this video, and please subscribe to my channel, like and share this video with any of your friends who also want to learn English, and I will see you in my next video. Thanks for watching.